So macroeconomics normally has a lot of graphing. The graphs are all simple, and I know you don't have to graph on the AP exam, but I think it's important to understand the relationships, which is why we're going over this the next couple of days. All right, so this one is a review, but one of the biggest ones in macroeconomics. We're measuring real gross domestic product based on the price level. Long run aggregate supply is completely inelastic or vertical. We have downward sloping aggregate demand, and we have upward sloping short run aggregate supply. They meet at an economy's output and price level equilibrium. Right now, we know aggregate demand is shifting left, or most likely, and most likely short run aggregate supply is also shifting to the left. This next graph is important for the next unit, Unit 5, and it's the money market graph. Notice quantity is still on the x-axis or vertical axis. Notice we have nominal interest rate, which is the price to borrow money, and that's before adjusted for inflation. So remember, nominal is not adjusted. The money supply is perfectly inelastic, and that is what we're going to go over next unit, but that's depending upon the Federal Reserve, which is also referred to as the central bank, determines the money supply. And then we have downward sloping money demand. So MS is for money supply, MD is for money demand. We have the price to borrow money, which is nominal interest rate, and we have the quantity of money on the horizontal axis. And again, we really won't be doing much on this graph until the next unit. This is the loanable funds market graph, and this is basically just our basic supply and demand, but it's for loanable funds. Remember that there are two ways to look at the interest rate. One is if you take your money and you deposit it with a bank or a lending facility and you get money in return. So you could be the lender, you're loaning out your money, and then the other one is when you borrow, when you're borrowing money to pay for college tuition, or you're borrowing money to buy your first car. So this is measuring the real interest rate, and it's based on the demand and supply of loanable funds, which is all forms of credit, loans, bonds, savings, deposits, etc. All right, and then this graph is the foreign exchange market. It looks like your basic supply and demand graph. We've got downward sloping demand, upward sloping supply, and this time it's the quantity of dollars, but we're comparing it to the price in pesos. So I always think of it as a general, like a store where you bring your currency in, and you bring in, people bring in dollars and pesos and yen or whatever, and you exchange it for different currencies. I think it's a little bit easier to understand with two graphs, but I'm just showing you the one today. So for example, if US goods become really popular and more countries want our currency, the dollar is appreciating, so the value is going up. And then in this example, if the dollar is appreciating, the peso then has to be depreciating, because they're taking their pesos to the market and they're supplying more pesos and they're taking out dollars. Because I don't know about you, but if I had a business, I would prefer to be paid in dollars over pesos. So that's the foreign exchange market. You won't need to graph it this year. This is the unit that looks like it's being cut, but I did want to share the graph with you. And so yeah. So this is our production possibility curve from microeconomics, gets revisited in macroeconomics. So remember, this is the trade-off. If you're going to produce more good T, you have to give up producing good R. And so you move along the curve. Not the greatest graph that I stole off the internet, but production possibility curve could come back in macroeconomics, and it's a trade-off between two goods. It's the opportunity cost. Okay, and this is our last graph, comparative advantage, and it's basically you're looking at two production possibility curves. This is a 2015 AP Macro Test question number 2, and in the illustration you can see that country X either can make 6 furnaces or 8 solar panels, and country Y can make 6 furnaces or 12 solar panels. And so what we're looking at is specialization, who should do what, and it's going to tell us that basically both countries benefit from specialization. You look at which country has the lowest opportunity cost. So if country Y makes furnaces, they give up more solar panels. So their opportunity cost of making furnace is higher than country X. So in this situation, country Y should make solar panels and country X should make furnaces, and that way they both are able to produce more. Just a reminder, the Phillips curve is the graph that shows the representation between unemployment and inflation. If unemployment is high, in this graph it's 7%, the inflation rate is 3%. If unemployment is low, let's say 2%, maybe you would have an inflation rate of 6%. So that's that relationship between unemployment and the inflation rate. I highly expect this to be on the AP Macro exam on May 21st.